And then give me a yes if you also know what it means to not have options. Does anybody know what it feels like to not? Has anybody? Have you ever been in a situation where you had no options, or maybe, or let's say you were in a situation where you had no options, and then suddenly you had lots of options? What do you think? Let me ask you the next question then. Um, how did you feel when you had lots of options in life? Let's say job options or options on who you want to date or options on, I don't know, where to spend all the money in your bank account. How did you feel when you had lots of options? Tell me how you felt then, and then I want you to tell me how you felt when you had no options. You felt free when you had lots of options. You felt great. Okay, cool. This is great. Secured. I see secured. Okay, when you had no options, you felt stressed, frustrated, right? Yeah, yeah. And this is what's really amazing to me that I love is um that really life is about options. We use the word freedom a lot. We like our people love to use the word freedom. And unfortunately, the people that talk about freedom the most typically don't know anything about freedom. They will sell you freedom through slavery. They'll tell you, "Oh, freedom is getting your dream job." And that right there is a restrictive reality because nobody dreams about labor. Like if you have your wildest dream, it's not going to involve going to somebody's factory or somebody's office and being away from your kids all day. That's not a dream. That might be an acceptable reality, but that's not a dream. So options are big. When I talk to kids and I give them advice on what to do with life, I always say, well, I don't really know if you should define yourself by a career, but I do know that you're better off if you have more options. And I do know that money gives you options. And when you have options, you're typically happier. All the research and the studies show that when they study lab rats that have options, they're happier. Lab rats that have no options, they get depressed. Their cortisol levels are high. They're very, very sad, very stressed out, things like that. And I want you to think about how many people you know who, especially economically, feel like they have no options. I want you to describe their lives. Like every time they want to do something, it's like, well, I can't do it because I don't have enough money, right? So you know what options are, and the reason I bring it up that way is because you know options, you know what they are, and you know that they're valuable, right? They call that in economics, they call that utility. Utility is happiness, basically. You know that options bring you happiness or utility. They make you feel better. Your life is better. So if you had a choice between having a life full of options versus a life having no options, you'd rather have the life that's full of options. And here's the other thing you know. So you know options are valuable. That's the first thing. In fact, when we learned option theory in school, like everything we did in my doctoral program was all mathematical and theoretical. And we would talk about, higher dimensions and the calculus behind everything and the probability theory. It's really trippy. Like, it's the kind of stuff where you want to just smoke a joint and just say, man, dude, like if you go in the eighth dimension, I'm kidding. I don't smoke, but if I did, I'd probably do that. I'd probably sit around and smoke and just imagine multiple dimensions. That's how we talk about reality. Reality is very flexible and permeable, and there's projections and all kinds of crazy mathematical things. But the point is, the first thing we learned about options, though, in option theory, actually, is that you're always better off when you have more options. That literally an option has what they call a non-negative value, meaning that you are never ever ever worse off with more options, right? And so because options make your life better, options have a value. They never have a negative value. They always have a positive value. And so when you are looking to get more options, it has a positive value, which means that it makes sense to buy an option. But then also, when you have fewer options, you're in a weaker position, so to speak. You have less flexibility and you're less happy. So you should only allow yourself to have fewer options if you sell something. So what does this mean? Well, basically, anytime I give up an option, I should get compensated for that.